Stop for a moment. Not because what you're about to hear is shocking, but because it's going to feel uncomfortably familiar. Like someone reached into the quietest part of you and pulled out something you've never quite been able to say out loud. That restless pattern you keep circling back to. That specific kind of pain that returns wearing different faces. That persistent feeling that some part of you is still waiting to be fully seen. Now let me ask you something. What month were you born in? I know how that sounds. Like the kind of detail you mention at a gathering and immediately forget, as arbitrary as your blood type or your zip code. But what if it wasn't random? What if the precise month you entered this world carried something with it, a psychological imprint, a symbolic frequency that has been quietly shaping the way you think, feel, love, and chase meaning ever since? This is not astrology. This is not wishful thinking. This is the perspective of Carl Jung, one of the most penetrating psychological minds in human history. Jung believed that time is not neutral, that the moment we arrive in this world, the season, the month, the particular symbolic energy saturating that chapter of the year, leaves a mark on the developing soul. Not as a sentence, not as a fate, but as a map. He called these underlying patterns archetypes, universal energies that surface across every culture, every mythology, every dream humanity has ever produced. They live in what Jung named the collective unconscious, a vast, invisible reservoir of meaning shared by every person who has ever walked this earth. And here is what changes everything. Jung believed each of us carries a unique constellation of these archetypes. The month we were born is one of the first coordinates on that inner map. Think about what it actually means to be born into a specific season. The emotional atmosphere of that time, whether the world was frozen in stillness, erupting with new life, blazing with heat, or quietly releasing what it no longer needed, becomes woven into the symbolic fabric of your arrival. It shapes, in ways too subtle for the conscious mind to easily track, the emotional and psychological tone you came into this existence carrying. This doesn't fix your fate. Jung was precise about that. These patterns are not cages, they are mirrors. They don't show you what you're required to become. They illuminate what is already present in you, waiting to be recognized. The natural strengths you can lean into. The shadows that keep returning until you finally turn and face them. The deep currents beneath your behavior that explain so much, if only you know how to read them. Today we walk through all 12 months, from the silent depths of January to the searching restlessness of December. By the time we reach the end, you may not just see your birth month differently. You may see yourself differently. Take a breath. This is the kind of knowledge that doesn't stay on the surface. Jung saw nature's cycles, the turning of the seasons, as living expressions of archetypes. Winter's inward silence, spring's urgent push toward life, summer's full, unapologetic radiance, autumn's graceful release. Each season carries its own psychological weather, its own emotional atmosphere. And because every month inhabits a particular place in that turning wheel, each month carries symbolic weight. Consider March, a month of transition where winter's grip loosens but spring has not fully arrived. Stillness cracking open into life. Jung might say that someone born in this suspended moment carries a dual nature, the pull between stillness and action, between two worlds neither of which is quite home. These individuals feel shifts in their environment and emotions with unusual precision, instinctively seeking balance between opposites. Compare that to someone born in January or July, months when a season has fully settled. There is a groundedness, a structural solidity present. Jung associated these births with archetypes of endurance, inner strength, and long-range thinking. These are the builders, the ones who create stability not just for themselves, but for everyone in their orbit. What Jung found most compelling was this: time itself has a temperament, a rhythm, a narrative. And when we arrive at a particular point in that unfolding story, we absorb its symbolic frequency, like a background current shaping our instincts and emotional responses without us ever knowing where that influence began. If this kind of inner exploration speaks to you, subscribe to Carl Jung Philosophy and share this with someone on their own journey of self-discovery. The right words find the right person at the right moment. Now, let's enter the 12 months and discover what the symbolic rhythm of the year has been quietly saying about the journey of your soul. January, the first gate of the year. Outside, a biting cold. Nature in its most profound dormancy. Not emptiness, but depth. Into that depth, the January-born arrived. You carry the seeds of the sage archetype. Your greatest strength is your mind. You don't hover at the surface of things. You go deep, always. When everyone around you is reacting with alarm, you pause, assess, and locate the clearest path through. For you, knowledge is the supreme treasure. You read, investigate, need to comprehend. People seek you out when things fall apart because they trust your calm, uncluttered perspective. You are the advisor, the anchor. But the sage's shadow runs exactly as deep as its wisdom. That powerful mind becomes your prison. You overthink, overanalyze, calculate so long that the moment passes while you're still searching for the perfect plan. Emotions unsettle you. They don't conform to logic, resist measurement, refuse to be controlled. So you struggle to hear your heart beneath the noise of your own thinking. To others, you can appear cool, even unreachable. The shadow sage is a thinker lost in the labyrinths of his own mind, afraid to simply feel. Your path is reconciling your intellect with your emotional life, letting wisdom be informed by intuition rather than threatened by it, giving yourself permission to act before every variable is accounted for, to sit with a feeling instead of immediately dissecting it, to trust that your heart holds its own intelligence, one your mind cannot replicate. The wisest person is not the one who knows everything. It is the one who knows how little they know and isn't afraid to feel it. February, the last chapter of winter. Beneath the frozen surface, something invisible has already begun stirring. Nothing visible yet, but the whisper of what's approaching drifts through the air. Into this quiet, electric anticipation, the February-born arrived. You carry the energy of the visionary. You see what others cannot. While the world occupies itself with today, you are already sketching the portrait of years ahead. You are an idealist with a genuine longing to make the world more just and more alive. You challenge inherited structures, question what everyone else accepts. You are the reformer, the inventor, the dreamer who wakes up still dreaming. Your freedom is not a preference, it is oxygen. But the visionary's shadow is disconnection from the ground. You inhabit the future so completely that you repeatedly miss the present. Your ideas are extraordinary, but you tend to avoid the concrete, unglamorous labor that would bring them to life. Deep bonds with others feel elusive.
people seem too anchored in the mundane. You can feel profoundly alone because no one else appears to see what you see. The shadow visionary is an exile whose inner world is so rich and so distant that they've lost the thread back to this one. Your path is learning to land your visions, to build a bridge between the sky and the soil, to break breathtaking ideas into small, achievable, imperfect steps, and to be patient enough to watch those steps accumulate into something real. To walk alongside other human beings in this world, sharing their ordinary joys and sorrows without treating them as lesser for it. To discover that the most radical thing a dreamer can do is actually finish something. The greatest visionary doesn't only gaze at stars, they also know how to plant seeds. March, the month where winter stages its last resistance while spring takes its first courageous steps. Into this surge of awakening and beginning, the March-born arrived. You carry the spirit of the pioneer. You are the initiator. Within you lives an energy that never fully depletes, a joy of living that resists every container. Waiting is agony. When a thought arrives, you move immediately. You are brave, unbothered by untested paths, with an almost childlike openness to the world. You carry no concealed darkness. You are the first stone thrown into still water. You bring motion and vitality to every space you enter. But the pioneer's shadow is impatience and impulsiveness. You begin so rapidly that finishing becomes a persistent struggle. Projects are abandoned halfway. Your reflex is action first, thought later, which leads you into situations a single additional moment of reflection would have prevented. In your momentum, you can miss the emotional reality of those around you and wound without any intention of doing so. Your path is marrying that magnificent initiating energy with patience and perseverance. To learn that the second half of any journey, the part where the novelty fades and discipline is required, is where character is actually built. To realize that completing something carries a satisfaction that the pure rush of beginning can never give you. To pause just briefly before each move, not to lose your momentum, but to direct it. The greatest pioneer is not only the one who opens the path, it is the one who walks it steadily and fully all the way to the end. April. Spring asserting itself with complete authority. Life pushes upward, relentless and unashamed. Into this fierce, rising force, the April-born arrived. You carry the power of the warrior archetype. You are the protector and the fighter. When you have a cause, nothing can halt your momentum. You defend those you love with your entire being. Injustice is something you cannot witness without responding. Your energy is concentrated and formidable. Once you lock onto a target, you find everything required to overcome what blocks the way. You lead, and your courage is genuinely contagious. But the warrior's shadow is destructive anger and the compulsive search for an adversary. You are so oriented toward conflict that even in peaceful times, you find something to battle. Being right matters as much as winning, so compromise feels like surrender. When anger fully takes hold, you can devastate the people who matter most to you. The shadow warrior is a soldier who can no longer distinguish ally from enemy, still fighting a war that ended long ago. Drop 444. I trust the process even when the battle inside me is real. In the comments right now. Your path is developing the wisdom to recognize when and what is genuinely worth fighting for. That not everything requires your full force. That sometimes retreating or offering forgiveness is the most powerful form of victory available to you. That the same fierce energy which burns bridges can, when redirected, build them stronger than anything that existed before. Learning to ask yourself in the heat of any moment, am I fighting for something or just fighting? The greatest warrior is the one who knows precisely when to return the sword to its sheath. May. Nature at its most generous. Every color, every fragrance, every texture of living on full display. Into this fertility and beauty, the Mayborn arrived. You carry the inspiration of the Creator archetype. You are the one who brings beauty into existence. Whatever you touch, you refine, giving it form, harmony, and meaning. You are in love with beauty itself, art, music, nature, a carefully prepared meal. The sensory richness of life is sustenance for you. You are patient, loyal, dependable. People feel steady in your presence. You love to build tangible, enduring things. But the Creator's shadow is stubbornness and resistance to change. You are so attached to your established comforts and familiar rhythms that anything unexpected registers as a threat. Stepping outside your comfort zone demands enormous inner effort. The shadow creator is a gardener who erects walls so formidable around their beloved garden that no change can ever enter. Your path is pairing that magnificent creative force with flexibility. To find beauty not only in what endures, but in what passes. To accept that leaving the comfortable sometimes makes you richer, not poorer. That the version of you on the other side of discomfort carries things you couldn't have found any other way. To practice holding your creations with open hands rather than clenched fists. The most abundant garden is not only filled with beautiful things, it is one where the wind of change still moves freely through it. June, summer's opening act. Days stretch long and luminous. People spills into conversation and connection, into this charged current of curiosity and contact. The June-born arrived. You carry the soul of the communicator. You are the connector. Curious, quick, endlessly interested in how the world works and what people think. You love to talk, to write, to bridge ideas and people who might otherwise never find each other. Your humor is sharp and effortless. You can dissolve the tension in a room simply by entering it. But the communicator's shadow is shallowness and emotional distance. You move across so many surfaces that depth becomes rare. You tend to analyze your feelings more readily than you inhabit them, describing experience from a comfortable remove rather than actually living it. When you feel trapped or bored, your words can become precise instruments of damage. The shadow communicator is a brilliant entertainer who makes everyone laugh and returns home to an empty room. Your path is letting your mind descend into your heart. To discover that knowledge can be lived and felt with the whole body, not only analyzed from a comfortable distance. To value silence, to learn that the pauses between words often carry more meaning than the words themselves. To stop performing connection and instead risk it. To dare, within all those relationships you weave with such effortless skill, to build a few that are genuinely, uncomfortably, vulnerably real. The greatest communicator is not simply someone who speaks beautifully. It is someone who knows how to truly, completely listen. July, the heart of summer. Families gather. The concept of home and belonging takes on new weight. Into this warmth of protection and devotion, the July-born arrived. You carry the compassion of the nurturer archetype. You are home to other people. Tender, empathetic, protective at your core. Your capacity for empathy is remarkable. You feel what others feel as though it is happening in your own body. People feel genuinely safe near you. You are the harbor they seek when the sea becomes rough. You nurture not only people, but animals, ideas, anything that requires patient tending. But the nurturer's shadow is oversensitivity and the quiet development of emotional dependency. You give so expansively that when the same energy isn't returned, the pain runs disproportionately deep. You can cling too long to memories, to people, to the way things once were. In your desire to protect those you love, you can sometimes suffocate them. The shadow nurturer becomes a martyr, so depleted by giving, so afraid of loss, that love itself becomes a subtle form of control. Rite 11. I am learning to love without losing myself. Below this video right now. Your path is turning that extraordinary compassion inward, nurturing your own soul with the same devotion you extend to others. To learn the word no and hold a limit without guilt consuming you from the inside. To understand that a person who never replenishes themselves eventually has nothing real left to give. And to discover that sometimes the most genuine act of love is releasing, trusting the people you love to find their own way, their own strength. The best home is the one that gives everyone inside it room to breathe freely. August, summer's most spectacular hour. The sun presides like a sovereign. Life spills boldly into the open, vibrant, unashamed, wanting to be witnessed. Into this radiance and natural authority, the August-born arrived. You carry the magnetism of the leader archetype. You were made for the room. There is a natural charisma to you, an unmistakable presence that announces itself without effort. You are generous, expansive, and deeply self-assured, and that assurance elevates the people around you. Leadership is instinctive for you, not because you demand it, but because you model it. People follow because you make them believe something extraordinary is possible. But the leader's shadow is ego and the hunger for constant recognition. You've grown so accustomed to the spotlight that criticism lands with disproportionate force. When someone else shines more brilliantly, something tightens within you. You can slide toward the authoritarian, expecting outcomes and people to conform to your vision. The shadow leader is a solitary figure on an empty throne, still performing for an audience that has long since departed. Your path is understanding that true leadership is not about holding the spotlight. It is about directing it toward others and watching them rise higher than you might have expected. To balance pride with genuine humility, the kind that doesn't perform modesty but actually means it. To celebrate someone else's victory with the same wholehearted enthusiasm you bring to your own. And most profoundly, to discover the integrity of doing what is right and noble, even when no one is present to witness it, when no one offers applause. The greatest leader is not the one who wears the crown, but the one who carries it in their heart. September. Summer's heat withdraws. The harvest arrives. Everything is sorted, organized, prepared for what follows. Into this energy of diligence and precision, the September-born arrived. You carry the dedication of the servant archetype. You are the one who makes things actually function. Detail-oriented, meticulous, devoted to doing whatever you do well. You possess a practical, analytical intelligence, gifted at transforming chaos into order. You love to help, but your help tends toward the practical. Not a shoulder to cry on, but a clear, step-by-step route through the problem. You are the essential, invisible component that keeps the entire mechanism running. But the servant's shadow is relentless self-criticism and the weight of anxiety. Your drive for perfection makes you merciless, toward yourself first, then toward others. Nothing is ever quite sufficient. You tend to mentally rehearse worst-case scenarios, which makes it hard to enjoy what is directly in front of you. The shadow servant is a tired, quietly desperate helper who has forgotten they also deserve tending. Your path is accepting that imperfect can still be beautiful, and that the pursuit of flawlessness, taken too far, becomes its own form of suffering. To extend toward yourself the same gentleness you offer others without a moment's hesitation. To occasionally release control and discover that the world doesn't end when things unfold differently than you planned. That sometimes the unplanned version is better. To recognize that the highest form of service begins with tending to your own wholeness first. The best help is offered not from anxiety, but from a place of genuine, unhurried peace. October, the midpoint of autumn. Nature in its most arresting colors. The air balanced between warm and cool. Beauty and melancholy sharing the same breath. Into this grace and equilibrium, the October-born arrived. You carry the diplomacy of the mediator archetype. You are the one who restores balance. Harmony, fairness, and peace are necessities for you, as fundamental as air. You despise unnecessary conflict and friction. You have a natural gift for resolving disputes and finding middle ground. Relationships are your lifeblood. Sharing life is the entire point of it. You are drawn to beauty and elegance in all its forms. You are the one who steps between warring sides and gets them to shake hands. But the mediator's shadow is indecision and the avoidance of honest confrontation. In your effort to maintain peace, you suppress your own convictions, your own truth. Saying no is genuinely painful, which renders you vulnerable to being taken advantage of. You tend to bury real problems rather than face them while they're still manageable. The shadow mediator is a likable but ineffective diplomat who has forgotten whose side they're actually on, including their own. Your path is understanding that genuine harmony is not everyone agreeing. It is different truths coexisting with mutual respect. That sometimes protecting what you believe requires you to stand and say something uncomfortable, even at the risk of disrupting the very peace you value. That your own needs, your own convictions belong in the equation, not as a concession, but as a right. To practice having a real opinion and voicing it. The most powerful mediator is the one who has first located balance within themselves and knows what they actually stand for. November, autumn at its deepest and most mysterious. The leaves gone completely, life and death interlaced. On the surface, everything appears still, but beneath the ground, a great transformation prepares the next spring in the dark. Into this mystical energy of dissolution and rebirth, the November-born arrived. You carry the power of the alchemist. You are the transformer. Intense, passionate, and intuitive at a depth that resists explanation. The surface holds no interest for you. You always search
for what lies beneath the appearance. You have a natural ability to read people and situations that feels almost uncanny. Crisis doesn't frighten you. It is precisely where you come most fully alive. Because you are like the phoenix, you rise from your own ashes. You possess the rare capacity to take your deepest pain and transmute it into your greatest strength. But the alchemist's shadow is the misuse of power and the unconscious pull toward self-destruction. The emotions you carry are so concentrated that they can seize control. Jealousy, obsession, the gravity of revenge. These shadows have more access to you than to most. You think in extremes, all or nothing, no gray. You can be as relentless with yourself as with anyone else, unconsciously generating crisis because transformation has become your only familiar terrain. The shadow alchemist is a sorcerer who burns everything, including themselves, with fire they can no longer direct. Your path is learning to wield that extraordinary transformative power with wisdom and genuine compassion, turned inward as much as outward. To discover that forgiveness is the deepest alchemy available to any human being. The willingness to release what happened without erasing what it meant. To let go of the compulsion to control yourself, others, outcomes, and practice the radical, terrifying act of trust. To move from being a prisoner of your emotional intensity toward becoming its author. The greatest alchemist is not only the one who turns darkness into gold, but the one who finds the light already present within the darkness itself. December, the final gate of the year. Winter returned, not the winter of beginning, but of completion. Long nights calling the mind toward distant horizons, toward philosophy, toward the question that never fully resolves. What does any of this actually mean? Into this energy of seeking and expansion, the December-born arrived. You carry the restless soul of the wanderer. You are the seeker. Freedom is not something you want. It is something you require, like oxygen. You experience life as an open invitation to explore without limit. New cultures, new philosophies, new people, new ways of seeing. Your optimism is almost improbable. Even in the darkest circumstances, you find a reason to keep moving. You love to learn and to share what you've discovered. And more than any destination at the end of a map, you love the journey itself. But the wanderer's shadow is the flight from accountability and the tendency toward excess. Your love of freedom can shade into a fear of genuine commitment, of putting down roots, of being fully known by someone over the long arc of time. When a relationship or responsibility demands something permanent and difficult, the impulse to move on can surface with surprising speed. You can chase the next horizon while failing to perceive the treasure already in your hands, the depth that only reveals itself when you stop moving long enough to look. And beneath the philosophical confidence, a quiet arrogance can develop, the assumption that you've already seen enough to know. The shadow wanderer is a weary traveler who never arrives anywhere, because arriving would mean stopping, and stopping would mean finally facing themselves. And here we stand, 12 months, 12 thresholds, 12 mirrors held up to something the ordinary mind rarely gets to see directly. Perhaps in your own month, you recognized yourself with startling clarity. Perhaps something clicked into place that you've never been able to name before. Perhaps another month surprised you, reflecting something you carry that you hadn't expected to find there. All of that is the work. This is what Jung would want you to hold. None of this is a verdict. The archetypes he spent his life describing aren't categories designed to contain you. They are invitations to recognition. They don't tell you who you are required to be. They illuminate who you already are, beneath all the noise, beneath all the roles, beneath all the quiet adaptations you made just to survive the life you were given. The luminous side of your archetype, that is your gift. Not something you constructed from scratch. It arrived with you. It is the way you move through the world when you are most completely yourself. Don't minimize it. Don't apologize for it. Let it be exactly as large as it actually is. The shadow, that
is not your enemy. The shadow is simply the part of you that has not yet been welcomed home. The qualities you learned to conceal because somewhere, at some particular moment, they seemed too large or too dangerous or simply too much. Jung's entire life's work was an argument for turning toward those parts rather than fleeing them. Because when you finally integrate what you've been running from, something shifts in a way that is difficult to describe but impossible to miss. You become whole in a way you hadn't realized you weren't. Whatever month brought you into this world, understand this. You are not one archetype. You are all 12. The sage and the warrior, the nurturer and the wanderer, the alchemist and the dreamer. Life calls different ones forward at different moments in different seasons of your becoming. The question Jung was always really asking was this: will you be willing to know yourself, all of yourself, deeply enough to live with intention, deeply enough to love without losing the thread back to who you actually are, deeply enough to walk into the darker passages of your inner life carrying a lantern instead of running from the dark? Your birth month is not your destiny. It is your starting point, a door not a room. What you do with that map, how honestly you read it, how much courage you bring to the parts of yourself you haven't yet visited, that belongs entirely to you. The most significant journey you will ever take is not across any landscape visible to the eye. It is inward, and it requires everything you are, light and shadow both. That journey doesn't end here. It begins here. We'll meet again in the next conversation. Until then, keep going inward. The most important territory is still ahead.